Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today, we are discussing my top 5 facts of the Lost Primarchs. The 5 most important things we know about them, and the 5 things that must be considered when trying to decide their fate. No real need for a spoiler warning today, but obviously I am going to be mentioning how we know this information as we go through. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. And with that said, let's waste no time and just jump straight in. With number 1, the first most important fact we know regarding the Lost Primarchs, that they were found and reunited with the Emperor and given their legions. It is stated across the lore countless times over that all 20 Primarchs were found and united with the Imperium. However, for me, the most concrete and conclusive information we have comes from the short story The Chamber at the End of Memory, where Rogel, finding their old chambers within the Imperial Palace, recalls, "I knew them." Dawn took another step towards the doors, silently reaching for deep memories of the two brothers. Not all the Primarchs could say they breathed the same air as the Lost Sons, but Dawn was one of the few. He had been with them, if only for a while. And then it's really doubled down on moments later, when he and Malcador are discussing the fate of their legions. The legions they left behind, leaderless and forsaken, were too great a resource to be discarded out of hand. They did not share the fate of their fathers. So it's undeniable. We have the Praetorian and the Sigillite himself confirming that the Primarchs were found and united with their legions. As far as any source within the Imperium is concerned, the Sigillite is as absolute as you can get. So it is beyond debate. There was no cruel fate or fall before their reunion with the Emperor. And moving on, important fact number 2 is whatever they did, it threatened the ideals of the entire Great Crusade. And this comes from the very same conversation between Rogel and Malcador, coming from the words of the Sigillite himself. The loss of the 2nd and 11th was such a wound upon us, and it threatened the ideals at the heart of the Great Crusade. It would have ruined all that we had built in the drive to reunite humanity and drive off our enemies. Steps had to be taken. So whatever the Lost Primarchs did, it could have fundamentally undermined and jeopardized the Great Crusade, had it not been dealt with. I think we'll have a little brainstorm about this after the weekend, but it really seems, when phrased like this, that it was definitely a decision and action the two took, as opposed to anything including chaos. And moving on, important fact number 3. The Lost Primarchs were removed and eradicated before all the Primarchs had been found, and thus not all the Primarchs got to know them, as was confirmed in that earlier comment we discussed by Rogel. Not all the Primarchs could say they breathed the same air as the Lost Sons, but Dawn was one of the few. He had been with them, if only for a while. Now, this does contradict the official order given of the Primarchs finding on the Heresy website. However, that doesn't surprise me, given the amount of contradictions we have within the Heresy lore. And in particular to this fact, I actually think it's right to contradict it as well, as it's doubly confirmed in the novel Deliverance Lost, with Corax's reunion and first meeting with his father, where the Emperor tells him he has 17 brothers. And Corax asks how that can be possible when he is number 19. And the Emperor immediately becomes filled with sorrow, telling him it's a conversation for another day, essentially telling us that the Lost Primarchs were already dealt with by the time of Corax's finding, confirming Rogal's statement. So it's an absolute fact for me, the Lost Primarchs were eradicated before Corax for an absolute fact. And moving on, fact number 4. The reason all knowledge of the Primarchs is eradicated is not, I repeat not, because of the Emperor. It was actually by request of Rogal and Rabute, again confirmed by Malcador in the chamber at the end of memory. My father allowed that? Dawn's sword did not waver. He did not stop you. Stop me. The Primarch's eyes narrowed. Malcador slowly moved back, out of the ornate sword's killing arc. The loss of the 2nd and 11th was such a wound upon us. It threatened the ideals at the heart of the Great Crusade. It would have ruined all that we had built in the drive to reunite humanity and drive off our enemies. Steps had to be taken. He met Dawn's hard gaze. The legionaries they left behind, leaderless and forsaken, were too great a resource to be discarded out of hand. They did not share the fate of their fathers. You and Rabute argued in their favour. But you do not recall it. Malcador nodded to himself. It fell to me to see that they were attuned to new circumstances. You robbed them of their memories. I granted them a mercy, Malcador replied, his tone wounded. A second chance. What mercy is there in a lie? Dawn thundered. Ask yourself. The Sigillite aimed the burning head of his staff in the Primarch's direction. You wish to know the truth, Rogal. It is this. What I shrouded in you was done by your command. You told me to do it. You and Rabute conceived of the scheme and granted me permission. Dawn's scowl deepened. I would never countenance such a thing. Untrue. Malcador slammed the base of his staff into the floor, the crash of the metal punctuating the word. Such was the fate of the Lost, that you willingly allowed it, to make safe that knowledge. Another denial formed in Dawn's throat, but he held it there. He put aside his anger and looked upon the possibility with detachment, with the cold eye of the Praetorian. Would I have done such a thing? If the matter were grave enough, would I have been so pragmatic, so bloodless in my command? Dawn instinctively knew the answer. There was no doubt that he would. If the Imperium was put at risk, he would give his life for it. The cost of some memories, of a fraction of his honour, was indeed a price he would pay. Now, you may think this isn't an important fact, but I couldn't disagree more. Because it not being the Emperor or Malcador who demanded the eradication of the Lost Primarchs is extremely telling and central to making any decision on what they may have done. As, in my mind, it lets us know quite clearly it had nothing to do with the ruinous powers, because had the Lost Two fallen in some way to the worship of the Pantheon, revealed the gods of the warp, the Emperor, or more likely Malcador, would have absolutely moved immediately to censor it, to protect everything else. But they didn't. The Emperor simply didn't overrule Rogal and Rabute's request, all revealing that, while it had merit, it was clearly something that would affect the Primarchs, cause division maybe, more than the outright doom of humanity. And so, in that regard, it is an extremely important fact to consider when deciding the fate of the Lost Two. And finally, fact number 5. We know the Lost Primarchs would have sided with the traitor Warmaster during the Heresy. And we know this pretty much categorically thanks to Rogal Dorn. Rogal, after having his memory of the Lost Two temporarily returned by Malcador, reflects on what he has learned. The Lost were gone, and it was well that they were. The grand misfortunes that befell them crumbled in Dorn's mind, but they left behind certainty. What came to pass could overshadow everything. Dorn knew that now. The raw, hateful truth is clear to me. If they were here with us now, this war would already have been lost. So Rogal is absolutely certain. The two would have sided with Horus against the Emperor. And so again, that gives real insight and implication into any debating regarding their fate. What they did. As much as it's called a misfortune, it's really again confirming that they did something against the Emperor. So much so in fact that Rogal has no doubt about which side they would be on in the Heresy. And I mean, even Jagatai had confusion and doubts about where he was going to go. So this is really telling. And so it reveals a lot of the sympathy we see towards the Lost Two is probably in fact because the Primarchs can't remember what they truly did. That some of the Primarchs would probably have no sympathy for them at all if they still possessed their memory of what had transpired. And so that's it. Those are my 5 most important facts regarding the Lost Two Primarchs. The most important things that need to be taken into account when debating their fate. 1. They were found and did indeed lead their legions. 2. Their fall threatened the ideals of the Great Crusade, that it could have contributed to division amongst the Primarchs and humanity. 3. They were eradicated before all the Primarchs were found, categorically before Corax. 4. It wasn't the Emperor and Malcador who wanted their history eradicated, instead a request by Rogal and Rabute. And 5. Rogal is absolutely certain the Lost Two would have sided with the Traitors during the Heresy, making it clear whatever they did, it was absolutely something against the Emperor. And so, as always everyone, what do you think? What do you think these 5 facts can tell us regarding the Lost Two? How do they shape our knowledge of the Lost? And taking them all into account, what do you think the Lost Two did that deserved their censure? As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. A huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too? But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.